Okay, everyone, we're going to get started right now. I hope everyone's doing well. Right now, it's sunny in Texas, Austin, Texas. It's about 84 degrees, so everything's going great for me. So we're happy to have everyone here to join us for best practices for migrating accounting systems. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's speakers from Zoho on the Zoho side is Val, Tala, and myself. I'll give you a little background about myself, and then I'll let them kind of introduce themselves and tell you about them. So I've been in the accounting industry for a lot of this information about migrating an accounting system. It really pertains to me, and it's one of the struggles that I had whenever I first started out, but I quickly got over it and I was able to accommodate a lot of my clients. And Val, are you there?
Yes, Good morning.
Yeah, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, I've been involved in the accounting technology environment for over 25 years. Years ago, I did a lot of implementations and migrations. Back in the day, it was products like Open Systems, Cyma, Great Plains, products like that. So I'm thrilled to be involved with Zoho now with the accounts group and looking forward to this webcast where I can kind of add a few ideas in different places. So good morning and welcome.
Hey, thanks, Val. Tala, are you there?
Yeah, I am here. Thanks so much, Nathan. Hey, everyone. My name is Tala Bakar. I work on Zoho's accountant partner program. So if you are a partner with Zoho, you may have spoken with me at some point. If you're not, we'd love to have you. Really excited for this session. I've known Josh for about 5 years now. We actually did this session way back, and we really felt like we just needed to bring some updated information to that. But I hope you'll enjoy and find the session valuable. Is that still happening right now?
So from Presti Naegele, we have Josh Blesnick, and he, like Tala mentioned, he's been working with Tala for about 5 years, and I'll let him kind of tell us about him.
Hi, everyone. This is Josh Blesnick. I am a consultant at Presti Naegele. I joined the team about a year ago and have been working within the accounting technology arena for about 5-6 years. And I'm very excited to be here on this webinar and looking forward.
Folks, a couple things you should realize. We're going to put Josh's information up here twice. We're going to put it up here at the front, and then we're going to also put this information up towards the end of the webcast. The reason for that is Zoho is really big on privacy. We don't use anybody else's servers. We won't let any other company track our people or what they're doing, and we won't track our own people in our software. We're extremely big on privacy. So all your information we use when you signed up for this webcast today, we keep that. We can't really even share that with a co-presenter like Josh. And so we're very close to the hand on that, keeping that tight. Well, to be fair, Josh has spent a lot of time to help us prepare this webcast and using his expertise. So if something in this webcast looks interesting to you and where you might like to have Josh's help, we would appreciate you reaching out to him from your side, reaching out to him and seeing if that might be something you're interested in. So that's how we will approach that through these webcasts. No one will outbound contact or market you following this webcast. We're expecting you to kind of take the initiative and reach out to Josh if there's something or some help you want with a migration or something that you need.
Thank you, Val. Appreciate that.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Val. Thanks, Josh. So let's go ahead and get started about the migration. But also, if Josh, if you want to introduce kind of your firm, that would be great as well.
Sure. So we are a full-fledged accounting firm located in New York City in Midtown. We specialize in tax and audit, and we also have a accounting technology consulting arm where we help small to mid-sized businesses as well as larger businesses migrate, convert, implement new accounting systems, as well as do training and support. And we really are the hand-holding type of firm to walk you through all the business processes and workflow to make sure that you're getting everything you need out of your accounting system.
Okay, great. Thanks, Josh. So before we start talking about the migration process, I wanted to share a little bit about Zoho if you are not familiar with it. So the great thing about Zoho is we offer a suite of business apps, and it's for your entire business. So anything you could possibly need an app pretty much for it. And here's a list of our apps. A lot of them really consist of anywhere from CRM to email to work drive. We also have a Sheets tool. We have a lot, but our team, we actually focus on the finance group. And this is what the group of finance apps looks like.
So as Nathan was saying, we have a host of tools. More than likely you're probably using one of them, which is why you're in this session, particularly Zoho Books. But just wanted to let you know that there are a number of other tools that are going to connect into Zoho Books. Josh will talk about some of those integrated systems in the migration path. So that's something that you'll want to pay attention to about how you can actually bring those in. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and pass over the reins to Josh so he can actually talk about the migration process that he's come up with.
Awesome. Thank you, Tala. I really appreciate it. So today, the main goal is to talk about migrating accounting systems and understanding what really needs to be done during the process. A lot of companies and companies that are trying to convert, not necessarily you're dealing with the CFO or the COO, you could be dealing with other people, such as a bookkeeper or a staff accountant who doesn't really understand the intrinsic details of the reports and stuff that you're looking at or looking for from your accounting system. So the first thing that to note is that a lot of people have a resistance to change. The resistance of changing an accounting system can change the reports, the way fields are populated, as well as the functionality throughout the system. And you need to understand the value that a new system can give you by using third-party apps or the ability to view new reports and have new features in the accounting system. So moving on to the next slide, which is the migration path. These are 9 major components to the actual migration process and what needs to be done when you're actually migrating. So the first one is custom integrations. So if you're using payroll or a invoice, third-party invoice or inventory, to know what your custom integrations are and what you would need in the new system. The second one is to define a cutoff date. Typically, when you convert to another system, you have a clear cutoff where the data in the legacy system or the older system will stop, and then you would start entering in the new data in the new system. Then we would want a clean legacy system in the sense that your books would be closed, and you would be able to use your legacy system for historical records, depending on the type of migration that you're doing, which we will discuss further in the presentation. Also, your chart of accounts implementation, which is a great way to revamp your books. Lists, open balances, open transactions, data migration check, which is to make sure both systems match and that you have what you need in the new system. And then you're able to go live.
Hi, Josh.
So Josh, one question I have that I often get, and something that I've found myself thinking about too, is how much do I have to stick to this particular path? When you work with your clients, do you alter this or do you remove stuff altogether? Kind of like, how can we determine how close we should follow it?
So I think that's a very good question, and thanks for answering. I definitely think that the order with how the migration path goes can be changed depending on what you're moving and the type of data that you're trying to move. But the 3 main key steps is to make sure you have a clean legacy system and that all your data is reconciled and looks correct, and that you know exactly what you want in the next system and both systems match accordingly. If that's the case, then the way that you order migrations or integrations of third-party apps or something like that, or lists and open balances, that can be changed. But those 3 things that I just mentioned, which are clean legacy system, a clean legacy system and knowing what you want to import, as well as to make sure that both systems match, is the key thing here, and that will make sure that there's integrity between the both systems after the conversion.
You know, Josh mentions there the clean legacy system. I can't overemphasize that enough. If you've got a bunch of junk and you're not careful and you bring a pile of junk over, we had one that we brought a QuickBooks data set that was just a mess. And what we should have done is cut it off cleanly, just started fresh in the new product. We were bringing it over to Sage at that time. And it was just a big mistake because we didn't see it in QuickBooks. There was damaged data. And in QuickBooks, everything said, oh, we're good, we're fine, you know, even on data check. We get this over into Sage 100 and the balance sheet's not even balancing. I mean, it's just a mess. And there's errors everywhere. Once again, I can't emphasize the idea of a clean transition set. Sometimes you have to cut bait and literally just decide to go clean and only bring over your last clean financial, good balance sheet, income statement, and just drop data if you have to, because sometimes it's not worth the grief to try to drag that dirty data across.
100%. And thank you, Val, for stressing that. All right, so now, and just a side comment, Val, just to continue the conversation and then move forward, is the main thing is if you have garbage in your, and I'm using that as a loose term, in your legacy system or your older system that you're trying to move, then all the transactions and issues will be in the new system, and it's very clear and clean to, before the conversion process happens or the migration process, is to make sure that you have a clean system on the other in your legacy system, so that issues that you're having from an accounting point of view won't be prevalent after the conversion. So just moving on into integrations. So one of the key things to point out and to understand is what other types of applications and features are you using within your accounting system that you might need access to that your system doesn't have. So the first one is payroll. I know that Zoho offers payroll in 5 states now. Is that?
Well, right now it's in 3. We're just now starting to release the payroll in New York, but we do have it in Texas and California.
Okay. So payroll is one of them. So, you know, during the migration process, if you do process your payroll yourself, to understand, you know, what payroll provider you're going to do, does it integrate into Zoho Books, and how you would be able to use it, as well as inventory management, CRM, which Zoho has a great CRM system that integrates into Zoho Books, online payment solutions, accounts payable solutions, receivable solutions, as well as 1099 software, Office 365, or any other applications.
Okay, I'm going to post the first poll question right now. While they're answering that, I'll ask you a question. Okay, Josh?
Sure.
So I do have a kind of a question while everybody's answering this. It's just have you attended one of our accounting webinars before? What do you think is the most important integration? Like, have you ever ran into an issue where you couldn't integrate something, but you still migrated them over to a different accounting system?
So the integrations realistically is up to the business and how the business functions. Any integration to a third-party app is really, is there a workflow? What is the workflow, and what are you trying to get out of your system? So that type of integration, if they're using a third-party application that doesn't work with, let's say, Zoho Books or QuickBooks or Sage 50, is there another type of integration out there that does similar a similar workflow and business process, and can we implement it? So just to give a quick example, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
There, you know, we had a potential client that actually came from Zoho. Books, who has a custom-made form that they fill out for every project to understand the entry date, the beginning of the project, when the project ends, and it kind of brings out a statement of work for that project. Now, there are ways that we can build that out and create the integration using Zoho Forms or Zoho Creator, and have that same type of integration after they move from QuickBooks to Zoho Books. But their integration with their current third-party system doesn't work. So to be able to say, hey, this is what your business process is, this is what you're looking for, and this is what we can do, is very key.
Yeah, for sure, Josh. I definitely agree. And thank you for everybody who answered that poll question. For everybody who this is a first time attending an accounting webinar, we appreciate you being here. So, Josh, I know you talked a little bit more about the cutoff. Can you explain a little bit more about the cutoff date and how important that is to migrate?
Sure. So the cutoff date is the time where everything in your books in the legacy system before the conversion happens stops, and that we have a clean set of data with all accounts reconciled and a clear understanding of what your chart of accounts look like and your list data to make sure it's clean. Now, typically a cutoff date is either at the end of a month or at the end of a quarter or a year. And this is very crucial to make sure that whoever you're working with, especially, me as a consultant, when I work with my clients, we make it very clear that this is the cutoff and this is what we are using, so that no data is entered in the legacy system during the time of the conversion. So then when the conversion or migration is complete, we have a clean set of
so you're saying you shouldn't just do it on the second day of the month or something?
Correct.
Yeah. I've been whenever I was doing my accounting advisory work, a lot of times people just wanted it right then and there, and they didn't realize that we needed everything to be clean to migrate over to a new system.
There is a concept. Some companies will want to do what they call run parallel, and they'll keep the old legacy system going while they're bringing up the new system because they don't have confidence in the new system yet, and they want to do that and they want to test stuff. That's fine for companies that can afford to actually run parallel. That's double work. I'm not a fan of running parallel just because I think it often ends up with lack of commitment to the new system. And I think you also end up with problems just by overwhelming everybody. So I'm not a huge fan of running parallel. I'm a huge fan of doing a lot of stuff up front, just what Josh is talking about, getting prepared, picking systems, grade needs analysis, coming up to a clean, good cutoff date, not rushing this. Don't rush this. Come up to a good, clean cutoff date and then go. And yes, you're going to have some frustrating days and weeks to start no matter what you're doing. I don't care which system you're going from or where you're going to. You're going to have some frustrating days and weeks. But if you stay with it and be committed, you're going to end up with a fantastic conversion.
Yeah, we'll also add that one of my corporate jobs I was at, we were actually migrating to a new accounting system. We were going from Oracle to some other system, and no, we were actually going into Oracle, but we had the previous system was an in-house system, and we customized it to our needs. And we were running parallel, and over a year, we weren't fully migrated over to Oracle, and we ended up just sticking with our old system. So this is kind of one of those difficulties. If you don't have a clear cut, if you don't really fully commit, you can not migrate over.
Well, it's even worse too, because sometimes what you'll have is people will forget where they put a transaction or where they recorded something when you're on a parallel. Did I put it in the legacy system or did I put it in the new system? And sometimes you got stuff put in one place, not in another. And whoa, I have just seen too many problems with run parallel. I would seriously keep with what we're talking about today that Josh has laid out here.
For sure.
Val, just one thing that I wanted to add to the parallel discussion is actually in Presti Naegele, one of our key things that we try to do is not run parallel, and we like to try to make sure there's no downtime during the conversion process. And when we actually pick the cutoff date, As an example, if let's say it's December 31st, we'll get data for December 31st, still use, do the conversion up to December 31st, find what the conversion date is. So let's say it's March, and then implement those 4 months of data during the process, during a weekend, to make sure that there's no downtime, and then start training with everything up to date during that time. So we eliminate downtime, and we eliminate the ability to run parallel, which
Right.
a lot of clients like.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't need double work, and you don't want downtime. Very good. That's exactly what we got to with my firm and a lot of the stuff that we did for years.
Yeah, and it also kind of what you're about to talk about is it really helps you to start cleaning up your old accounting system, and you can start fresh with a new one.
Yeah, so like we mentioned prior, the main thing is to scrub your old data. And typically when we actually do a migration, what we do is we look through all the list data, make sure it looks correct, see if there's any duplicates in the list data and point it out. Look at chart of accounts, the ability to look at accounts receivable and accounts payable and make sure they're accurate. Once all the data is scrubbed, looked at, and clean, then that's where the migration process starts. Just one thing that I want to mention during the scrubbing data part is a lot of people ask, well, what is your involvement with the migration, or what should my accountant's involvement be during the migration? And the scrubbing of the data gives you the ability to revamp your chart of accounts and look at how you're tracking certain income and expenses and be able to fix it. So when you are starting in a new system, all the issues or trials and tribulations that you had will now be corrected.
Yeah, for sure. And as well, ran into this issue a few times where I got a new client and we actually went through and redid all the chart of accounts because they created a account for everything they could possibly think of. So they were naming expense accounts based off of product names rather than just a general utilities or something.
Yeah.
All right, Josh, could you tell us a little bit about migration decisions?
Sure. So when you migrate, the main thing into a new system, the main thing is that you need to make sure that the features that you have or that you're looking for meet your needs in the new system, and also that your historical data is right for your business and its workflow, and that you understand what needs to be migrated. So on the next slide,
Okay.
there are two different types of conversion types. The first conversion type is a full data migration, which is historical data. We recommend up to minimum of 3 years for historical purposes views, lists, accounts receivable, accounts payable, as well as all financial transactions and data. The second type of migration is a partial migration, or what I like to call a list migration, where we kind of start from scratch from the transactional level, but we have your customers, your customer lists, your vendor list, all your item lists, products and services, classes, locations, tags, and the transactional data start fresh. And what a lot of companies do when they do a list migration or a partial migration, they use their historical data for lookup purposes for roughly around 2-3 years. And then that kind of phases out, and then their new system is good to go for any data that they need to look for historic history.
Hey, Josh. So on that front, something that I've talked to a number of Zoho advisors who are accountants and bookkeepers is determining what to do with that historical data. So if it's for lookup purposes, have you had any experience using, for example, Zoho Analytics to keep all of that data instead of putting it in the accounting system, so that you're not messing up account balances? So if we're using a reporting tool rather than the accounting tool for historical data, what do you think about that?
So I actually don't have any experience with Zoho Analytics in this particular area. But what a lot of people also like to do is, and I have some clients that do it, but not so recommended, is to export things into Excel. I know that there is other options, like you mentioned, Zoho Analytics, to create some type of depository for specific reports for historical data. But that definitely could be an option down the line.
Okay. And the reason I bring that up is some of those businesses that this discussion started with is they're trying to bring over lots of historical data. And a lot of that data may be incomplete, or it may cause the balances in the accounts to be off. And they just don't have the time to go back and, balance all those accounts. So they brought it there, and it was a way for them to kind of have a dashboard. So you go back and you see like who the best customers are over a certain period, find out the best selling products maybe in a season. That way you have the data you need for making those business decisions, but it's not necessarily cluttering the new accounting system that you set up so that it would be clean, uncluttered.
So Tala, just one thing that I want to comment, which I think I forgot to mention, the partial migration list data conversion is we import all trial balances for a however long of a period that you need to capture financial reporting for historical purposes. The transactions are not there, so you can't drill down to see who bought what and why. But in terms of income lines and expense lines, you would be able to run prior year reports and comparison reports to look at the data and to make business decisions. And what a lot of our clients do is they like trial balance. I was working on a migration where we did 5 years of historical data and then 2 years of transactional data. So if they wanted to look back and look at a trial balance and compare a profit and loss statement, they would be able to.
With cloud-based systems and monthly licensing, it's a little bit more tricky to pull the stunt that we did a lot of, and that was just keep the old system around. If it was already paid for, installed, and running, after the cutoff date, we leave the old data often on an old system, and then if somebody had questions about older stuff, refer back to it. But what you're going to find is once you're a month or two down the road in a new system, 90% of everything you do is within the last 15 to 20 days. And you seldom ever go back to it. So if you still have just some way to access it as ASCII data or, in an older system, something like that, keeping it around without dragging on too many licenses, you could do that. And that's what we did a lot of, is leaving old systems in place.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I just wanted to add, Val, is Zoho Books, for example, leaves data in your account indefinitely, right? As long as you've logged in, and I can get the exact numbers, but I believe as long as you log in like once every year, the account stays open. And I know QuickBooks Online actually does something similar. So if you're leaving, even though you don't have a subscription,
right,
you can leave your data there and then just double check with them as far as what the data retention policies are. But that may be enough for folks. And then obviously you want to export that into downloadable files, but you'll still have access to the reports for the most part.
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. From my experience, it was always important for us to try to keep that historical data in some fashion. So let's continue on to a chart of accounts and how important these are to migrating.
Sure. So thank you, Nathan, for narrating the presentation and moving us along. Really appreciate it. So within the chart of accounts, like we were saying and discussing, this really gives your CPA the opportunity to help you in the way that you're tracking your data, as well as your profit and loss statement, to be able to look at your income buckets as well as your expense accounts and make a change going into the new system. The other thing is, like we've been mentioning and we've been stressing very much on this call during our conversations, is a clean legacy system. A lot of times when we do a chart of accounts revamp, the revamp, if it's merging accounts or adding new accounts or moving activity from one account to another, it's very important to document that and to make sure that it's very clear what is being done. So when you're moving into the new system, we can look at it and understand what was done if there's any discrepancies from the legacy system.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, a lot of times whenever I was working with chart of accounts, if I wasn't organized, I would, forget what was included with certain revenue accounts or expenses. So it's very important to kind of have everything organized and make sure everything is reconciled as well. Before we go to the next slide, I'm going to launch the second poll real quick. And let's just give that a few seconds for people to answer.
Now, Nathan, during the polling question, if you don't mind, I have a question for you guys, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, go ahead. It looks like everyone answered, everyone pretty much 100%. So go ahead and ask that.
Sure. So Nathan, Val, as well as Tala, when you have partners who are interested, Zoho partners, as well as even clients who are interested in migrating, I know that, we as Presti Naegele are one of the firms that Zoho refers people to, but what is the advice that you give and the guidance that you guys give with people who are trying to do this themselves or are being stuck and don't know what the next steps are?
Sure. So this is Tala. I can answer that just because I've worked with all of our Zoho partners for a number of years now. Typically, the discussion I have with someone who's new to Zoho Books and they're considering doing a migration is, how much time do you have on your hands? Unfortunately, maybe right now that's a lot of time, which is why you're attending this webinar. But if you feel like you don't have the time to devote all the resources, that's when I typically would say, hey, reach out to a Zoho partner, bring your accountant with you. If you really love your accountant and you want to bring them to the new system, then you can do that as well. But you really want to determine, number one, the time, and then number two, your level of expertise. So if you're a casual user of your accounting system, maybe you're not able to really understand what the difference between debits and credits are, or you haven't ever set up a chart of accounts, you might not want to go in and cause some of those foundational issues by mistake that down the road you're going to have to pay an accountant to clean up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So typically I would steer them to an accountant just for those initial questions of like, do you know how to set up your chart of accounts? And then it's actually cheaper in the long run because you'll know that you didn't, excuse my French, like royally screw things up. So that's typically the discussion I have with those customers, and then the accountants who they're working with, because accountants will actually love customers that come with messed up books. It's just, more billable hours. Not that they would love to do that, but it's something that's kind of like a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, it gives them something to do for sure. Yeah, I will also add that a lot of times whenever I was talking to clients and everything, it's very important that you just keep it clean. If you want to start an accounting system by yourself, say if you're migrating to a new one, I would hold off on putting in the old data. Let an accountant do that if you're not an accountant and you're not familiar with it, just because there's a lot of things that go into balance sheets and profit and loss statements. But at the same time, you can start an accounting system. Just make sure you have a clear cutoff date where you didn't put things back and forth, just so it makes it easier for an accountant. So let's go ahead and move on to other migration paths.
Awesome. So just continuing the migration path, as soon as we have the chart of accounts finalized, understood, and we know what we want to do with the chart of accounts, now we have to look at the rest of the data in your legacy system and see what we're going to bring over and clean that up as well. So the first thing is your lists. Your list consists of customer lists, vendor lists, as well as contact items, products and service items as well. So these lists really are the way that you track your accounts receivable and as well as your accounts payable. And what we see many times are duplicates of customers or duplicates of vendors or customers in different locations. So I think that's step one. And then moving on, we look at your opening balances, your trial balance, your accounts receivable aging detail, your accounts payable aging, make sure everything looks good, and as well as your open transactions.
Yeah, well, just kind of say it's very important. We're going to get to it on the next slide, but it's very important to check your data whenever you're migrating over. You need to make sure your customers are the same, your vendors, your AR and AP. Those really are very important going down the road, because there's been so many situations where I get a new customer and their AR is all out of whack, and I have to really sit down with the client and just say, hey, what is still out there? What do you still need to get paid? And a lot of times the clients go, oh, that person's paid me. And so you need to make sure those are very clean whenever you transition over.
100%. And Nathan, just to solidify your statement now on the next slide, the data and migration check. So what we do as a firm, and which is very important, is to have control reports, to have a trial balance from the legacy system, accounts receivable from the legacy system, as well as the accounts payable from the legacy system, and compare and look at them to make sure that both of them match and everything ties correctly.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. I 100% agree with that, because you just don't understand the headache if it doesn't tie. And then say 2 years down the road, you get a new accountant and they start asking you these questions, what's going on with this? It was 2 years ago. You might not remember. So it's, you need to make sure that you understand and make sure everything is good to go.
100%. And once that is done and both systems reconcile, then you're able to go live and start working. Just a quick example, and then we'll move forward into the go live data section of the presentation. But I had a client that I did a conversion for. It was from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. We received the backup, and I instructed them to make sure that this is a clean cutoff. We scrubbed the data, went through their chart of accounts, changed a bunch of different reclassifications of accounts and merged them, and then we moved to QBO. And training was supposed to start on Monday after a holiday weekend, and unfortunately, their bookkeeper put in data for a week during that time, where they were, the business was closed during a holiday weekend. And there was an issue of seeing what was put in the legacy system compared to what was put in the real system, and to see if the systems actually match, because there was data entered in the wrong system. And we had to create a reconciliation, look at entered and modified dates of when transactions were entered, and re-enter them into the new system. So that's very clear that has to be done. And there is a clean cutoff. Your system is clean and scrubbed and ready to go. So just moving on to the go live part, and something that Val touched on earlier was running parallel as well as go live, just going live without running parallel. And like I said prior, our main focus is to reduce downtime, make sure that we have all of the information that we need into the system. It's reviewed by the client, and all changes to chart of accounts and list data are reviewed, understood. And what happens is, if let's say you're moving from QBO to Zoho Books, there's a lot of different fields that are in Zoho Books that are not in QuickBooks, and the way that data is in the system looks different. So to make sure those fields match and that we put fields in the proper place and it looks good, and as the client reviews it during the process, there is no reason to run parallel. But there is, depending on the type of system that you're moving from, that is definitely a conversation with whoever you're working with. A lot of people like to run parallel for the main reason of training, and it gives you the ability to look at data that you're entering and understand in both systems and make sure it matches and looks correct.
For sure.
So real quick, Josh, so let's say I want to do my own migration. I heard the warnings and I'm like, I'm a DIYer. I can assemble IKEA furniture. I can do this too. Would you say, hey, it's more important for that DIYer to run parallel to the T, so that they know that their old system and the new system, when they run equivalent timeline reports, work? Or would you say, it's kind of the same rule we talked about earlier? As long as you do a good job, you're good to go. Like, would you give them a particular way to do it that you think is more foolproof?
So I think that's a very good question, and I actually was asked this question not so long ago by somebody who was moving from QBO to Zoho Books. I definitely think running parallel, especially if you're doing it by yourself, makes sense in the way of making sure that the data is accurate and it looks good, especially if you don't have the accounting knowledge or the financial knowledge to understand where transactions lie and what is the back end of every transaction. So, as an example, there's debit and credit on every transaction, and to understand where, they plug into might be a little difficult to do it on your own. So having that conversation with, and I love this statement, if I can build IKEA furniture, I can do this too. Then yes, I think more of a step-by-step approach and a phased approach by looking at data from both systems would definitely help and suffice in that particular example.
Yeah, I believe it's very important to make sure everything looks the same. So what you could do is just do 1 month and just do 1 month in one accounting system, 1 month in the other. Just make sure that both your balance sheet and your profit and loss statements match up, so that whenever you're going forward, you know that this month everything matched, and you need to just make sure you keep the same format going forward.
One thing that does concern me about a person who doesn't understand accounting's not a natural science. And you might be able to build IKEA furniture, but if you start putting stuff in a lot of the wrong places and you end up where you've got to do a financial report, fill out a tax return, or do certain things, and you've got stuff in the wrong places, and you have to later hire an accountant to go through and clean it all up, it's going to be a much bigger bill if you make a giant mess in your accounting system than if you just hire an accountant, get them involved at first, at least teach you where to put stuff to make sure you're not putting stuff in the wrong places. That you're not going to save any money by doing that or time. It just turns into a nightmare.
For sure. There's been
And
situations where I've had lawyers who were doing their accounting and it was all wrong, and I had to go in there and fix everything. So definitely you need to make sure you get the general gist and just hire an accountant in the very beginning, for sure.
Val, just to piggy off what you just said, so one of the people who approached me who was moving from QBO to Zoho Books, they imported their list data themselves and were having trouble with the transactional data side of it. Unfortunately, when you look or scrub list data, the way that it ties in both systems matter, because customers and vendors are viewed differently in Zoho Books than in QBO, and sometimes the way that you link transactions to that list data, because every transaction has a customer or a vendor associated to it, it's hard to do. So I definitely 100% agree that it is worth having somebody look at this and help you with it in the beginning of the process, then later on, due to the fact that the bill will be higher and a lot of these things have to be redone.
So what do you guys think about, because like personally, I feel like one of the ways I might do it, and I don't know if this is a good way or not, is I would try to find someone to show me kind of initially how, for example, like how do I do a single import of a vendor, of a customer, and then them kind of let me put those together to help bring down the amount of work. Have you guys ever done anything like that, where you kind of work with the customer and kind of
Absolutely. Yeah. The accounts, a lot of your accounts involved don't want to do the clerical work. They just want to train you and do the advice and make sure stuff's in the right place and you're using the right processes. That way, you can not only keep the bill down, but you got stuff all in the right place. Most of the people that I worked with were very happy to work with you on, it's kind of like a piece by piece basis. They don't want to be sitting there inputting, transferring, changing every vendor, whatever. So yeah, I think that's kind of what we're talking about in this process.
Yeah, I really think that's kind of goes on to this slide. What is your involvement? And you need to just make sure that you're not creating more work at the end, and keeping everything clean. And if you want to do it yourself, make sure you have clear accounts. So whenever an accountant, if you have to hire an accountant, they can come in there and kind of take care of everything.
100%. And Nathan, just to add to that, is the real question is what your involvement is to understand what you're looking for and to make sure that you're getting what you need out of the new system that you're migrating to. What I think is a big thing that we come across all the time is our clients really don't know what they need. They understand what they want, but don't understand what they need. And that's something that we help and guide them through to make sure that they're able to get what they need out of their system and be able to flourish business-wise, and be able to integrate third-party apps, have, let's say, approval systems and different functionality that they were missing in their other system. But the key part of this is to make sure that somebody within the company is guiding it. And if you're working with a consultant or advisor, you're having the conversations, weekly, monthly during the conversion process, to make sure that the scrub of data looks accurate, what you're trying to accomplish, the pain points in the old system. And one of the things that we do is we do a business process review to understand the workflow and what was currently done in the legacy system. So when we do the conversion, if need be, and workflow and business processes change, we will be able to talk your language, understand your lingo, and what you actually do, and be able to train you accordingly.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely agree. Okay, well, thanks, Josh. Do you have anything else to add before we get to the demo?
No, I think that's good. I don't know if there's any questions or anything that I can ask or answer live.
So Josh, what we'll do is we'll jump into the demo real quick. Folks, on the left-hand side, there's the question panel. Please be sure to put in questions there, and then we'll come back in about 5 or 6 minutes after the demo, and we'll spend some time answering those questions. Does that work?
Yeah, we actually have to launch our third poll, and this is actually going to be a question kind of pointed towards you, Josh, and it's just asking people if they want to be contacted by you and your firm.
Awesome. Sounds great. And just to add to that, if you want to be contacted, I would love to have the conversation with you about the migration process, training. I know somebody just dropped a comment. If Zoho has a list of individuals by location, we offer training throughout the world and throughout the country, virtually, and can definitely assist. And if need be, we work on different time zones. So we could definitely be a resource.
Well, thank you for that, Josh. We really appreciate you kind of walking us through this.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys so that I can kind of show you a few things. Can you guys see the dashboard for Zoho Books?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. So, I just want to show you a few things real quickly that relate to several of the points Josh was referencing. So this is, of course, the dashboard for Zoho Books. If you have an account, you probably have seen this. Now, one of the first things that Josh talked about is, making sure that the kind of underlying structure of your accounting system is the same as the old one or updated to how you want it to be. So one of those important functions or modules is the chart of accounts. So here under the accountant tab on the left-hand side, you'll find the chart of accounts. And so one thing to note is that Zoho Books and a lot of accounting systems come preloaded with a bunch of accounts that are already there. It's not going to be blank, right? It's something that you can open up your accounting system and just start working on right away. And so Zoho puts a number of these. For example, accounts payable, accounts receivable. These are required accounts, and these are actually locked, so you cannot delete these. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to take a look at the existing list of accounts and then see what you need to add in addition to that. So for example, if you have a particular account related to servicing some kind of debt obligation, or there's a particular expense account that needs to be tracked separately, you can then go in and create these manually by choosing the account type, and then giving the account name, of course. And then you can also put in an account code, and you can update the account code on the required fields as well. Now, this is the manual way to do it. The way you typically would want to do it if you have many accounts is you'll want to go ahead and import that chart of accounts. So pretty much under every module in Zoho Books, you'll find some kind of settings button here at the top right. You'll find an import button. And then what's important is once you get to this import screen, you'll see that there is an option to download a sample file. So what this sample file looks like is, let me show you here. So I just have this opened up in Zoho Sheets. It's basically given me a few sample transactions, and I'll zoom in a little bit for you. But you'll see the most important thing is that the column headers are already listed for you. So this is important, not because they have to be in any particular order. They actually don't have to be in any particular order in your import file, but you'll want to make sure that these are either the same name or very similar so that you can match them. Now, this particular import file doesn't have a secondary kind of information sheet. But for example, if I go to the sample invoices import file, and I'll show you how to get to that, you'll see at the very bottom, there's actually another sheet in this. And if I open that up, it'll give me an entire index of all of the different types of fields and what is applicable. So for example, can an invoice number have both letters and numbers and symbols in it? It looks like yes, because it's a string field, not just an integer. So these are the things you can actually take a look at. This is really, really important because the required accounts in different accounting systems can actually be named differently. So for example, and Josh, you might be able to confirm this, in like Zoho Books, Zoho uses a certain name for income accounts, and for example, another accounting system like Xero has a slightly different name for those. And so you want to make sure that those names match up, because these account names must be exactly as they are in your chart of accounts. That's one of the most important things you want to look at here. So take a look at those sample files to get an idea. Now, once you have actually selected your data, you have it in a file. When you do the import, I'll kind of show you what this looks like in the invoices screen. So I'm going to go to sales and invoices, and I'm going to click on the menu button, which is the hamburger icon here at the top right. So if I go to import, now let's imagine I actually have a file, and there's a couple of options down here, whether I want to auto-generate invoice numbers. This will basically override any invoice numbers that are on your file. And then if you need to link invoices to a corresponding sales order, you can leave the default encoding if you just have a CSV file or an XLS. But let's say I go ahead and select this sample file that I have. Now what happens is on the next screen, it's going to recognize on the left-hand side, these are the required fields from Zoho Books. And then on the right-hand side, it's going to recognize the column headers from my file. So you'll notice that since I have the exact same name, I'm using the exact same file, it's automatically recognizing these for me. If they are different, then it's not going to pop up here. So you'll need to go in and actually select which column header that is from your file. Another important thing is you're going to want to choose exactly how the date is formatted, right? So if the date in my actual file is, let's say month / year, right? I'll need to find where that is. So there's month, day / year. So 4 years. I'll need to select that. And this is really important, or else none of your dates are going to make sense. Now, what happens on the following screen, and I can't really show you this, I'll try, because it's not a real file with real data. But also there's a checkbox here where if you're going to do lots of these import files, and it's a very particular way that these dropdowns have been selected, just go ahead and hit save these selections. And then when you bring in the next file, it's automatically going to choose those for you, even if it's not the exact way that Zoho has it set up. On the next screen, what it's going to do is going to run through your transactions, and it's going to tell you, hey, how many of those transactions are not able to be imported, and if there are any fields that it cannot read because those fields maybe don't exist yet. So of course, this file is junk. It says nothing can be imported. So this is a really important screen before you actually bring in the data. This is really, really important because once you bring in data, it's not always so easy to simply undo that import. You might have to go in and do a number of things. So this is a really important screen to make sure the data is being read and being understood. There are certain cases, like for example, with bank accounts, when you import data, that you can actually say, okay, that undo the last import, but that's not always the case on some of these other transactions. So that's something that I just wanted to show, that each of these particular modules has the ability to go into a menu, and you'll find a import function. So in this case, for customers, there's two options. There's customers and then customers contact persons. So contact persons are the individuals within the customer. So for example, if you work with other businesses, you might have a particular person in that business. So there's kind of a nuance there. And you'll see that there's a sample file here as well. You'll want to take a look at that. And so for example, if I go to the sample contacts, it'll give me all of the fields that it has here at the top. And then you'll also notice that the secondary sheet has all of the explanations about what's available. So this is something that I just wanted to make sure you had access to. I know this is really, really quick. We'll try to do a session where we kind of do a deep dive of what this looks like. And maybe actually use some real import files. But without further ado, we only have a couple minutes left. I'm going to switch back over to the presentation and see if we have any questions for Josh. And I'm going to put up Josh's information here. All right, so we have a question on importing sub-accounts into the chart of accounts. So I know from Zoho experience, and maybe you can kind of talk about this a little more, Josh, but you want to, of course, import in the first go around all the parent accounts, and then in the second go around you can import the child accounts because you need to reference the parent account.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, Talon, I'm not sure what the specific syntax is with parent and child accounts in Zoho Books. I would honestly have to look. But as an example, with QuickBooks imports and other system imports, parent and child accounts are separated by a colon. And, let's say you had utilities and then you had gas, electric underneath. So if you did utilities colon gas, it would create the sub account under utilities. But utilities would have to be imported first.
Got it. Okay. And then there's another question, which is this something like in Zoho Books you can do, just creating the import file on an Excel sheet?
And yes, okay. You can.
Got it. And yeah, and as long as the data can be read by the import, then you should be good.
And typically it's CSV, XLSX, and XLS formats.
Right. And then for bank formats, there's like quite a few more. So we're almost done here. I just want to make sure that everyone knows a couple of really important things. One is stay in this browser tab. Once we end the session, there'll be an evaluation that comes up. We really need you to fill that out. Even if you're not going to get CPE, please fill that out. Let us know how we're doing. You'll also get access to the slides if you stay in the session. Under the handouts tab, those will be available. I just want to point out Josh's email. It's jblesnick@pnatc.com. And Josh, maybe you can write that into the chat bar for everybody as well, just so they can copy it.
Sure.
Yeah, jblesnick@pnatc.com. If you answered yes on that poll question, Josh will be contacting you. And then if for some reason you missed a poll, because you need to answer 3 out of the 4, I'm going to launch the last one for just 2 seconds. And it's a really easy one. What is a go live date? There's also another question in the chat panel, although we are at the end of time here, so we'll try to see if we can take a look at that. But besides that, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone that joined. Thank you to Josh for putting this great presentation together and having this discussion with us. And then, of course, Val and Nathan as well. If you guys all want to come back on, that would be great.
Yeah, it was great having you, Josh. I really enjoyed kind of going talking to you about all this. You know, this is stuff I've experienced before, and I know you're in the weeds right now, so I really appreciate you kind of walking us through it.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Well done, Josh.
Awesome. Thank you guys as well. I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to continuing the conversation and having more webinars.
Thanks so much. And one more thing, if you have more questions, please go ahead and email Josh. You know, he's pretty good about responding to those. If you have questions about this presentation, I know a few folks were asking, they weren't sure how to use their legacy system, how that relates to it. Just go ahead and email him, jblesnick@pnatc.com. And then if you need to email any of us at Zoho, our email is accountants@zohocorp.com. All right, that's it from all of us here. Thank you so much, and see you on the next session.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.